I'm very happy to be here today, and this is an extraordinary moment of an activity that we've been organizing in collaboration with Watermans and with the support of the Art Council and the Spanish Embassy in London. The project Altered Landscapes is a project that has come a very long way from my preoccupation to understand what's happened to many people who sometime in their life face an extraordinary experience, traumatic experience. And I'm very interested in the storylines, the stories that these people want to tell. And this comes from my practice. I started as a photographer, and then for a few years, I was producing different projects that were trying to explain how to represent trauma. In 2003, and before 2003, in 1997, I started a project called Wounded Image, the Wounded Image. And the Wounded Image, it was the first attempt, the photography series, is the first attempt of me trying to represent trauma. For a few years, I was using photography to explore my internal world and trying to express that and communicate that with an audience. I realized that at that time I was more interested in telling stories. Photography wasn't enough for me. It wasn't a medium that where I could express my ideas fully. So I naturally progressed into a moving image. A moving image work with a very personal language style. And I want to show you a small selection of work. So probably that will illustrate better what I'm trying to say. my practice it's always have been exploring two different worlds, my internal world and how I can communicate, absorb what is out there. Since 1998, I was living in Spain, in Valencia, and for the first time walking in the streets, I bumped into a person, Frank, his name was, and for one reason we started talking, and Frank disclosed to me that he came from Nigeria. And I said to him, what are you doing here? And he said to me, well, I had to leave my country. I left my country because my family, my community was in trouble. Had you ever heard of the company Shell? And I said, no, I don't know that company. Well, they came to the place where I will live in Nigeria, and they forced us farmers. My family had been farming for generations, and this company was implanting, in that region where we live. And then to the extent that when we complained that our land had been contaminated, my father was killed and we had to leave. My mom went to Senegal and I had to cross the wall of the desert just to get to Spain. I mean, the whole story that he told me, it was really shocking. And again, accidentally, I, for the first time, came across to the figure of what we know now well, a refugee. And Frank, he didn't identify himself as a refugee. He just fled, to survive. This encounter with Frank really triggered inside myself, what can I do with my practice as an artist to explore, the experience of people like Frank. It was only when I moved to London in 1994, I continued my own art practice, and I produced The Wounded Image. The Wounded Image was very successful. It was presented at the National Portrait Gallery in London and the National Gallery in Edinburgh. And as I said, I moved into moving image because I felt I had to convey a narrative that photography at that time was not helping me. So in 1999, in 2009, I was invited by the Ministry of Culture in Colombia and the British Council to spend a residency as an artist in Bogota, the capital of Colombia. And when I was there, I met this local artist, Lorena, and talking to her, she asked me, what are you doing here, Juan? And I said, well, I've been invited to do a project. And I said to her, and what do you do? And she was saying to me, I'm working in this project for 3 years, working with a community of people who've been displaced because of the conflict that we're living in. And as she was talking about this, I realized that she was talking about my project. The project had been selected by the British Council to go to Colombia. So it was a moment in my career that I realized that I was coming to a country I knew very little about. And I was, with my brief under my arm, said, I'm going to make this project. Talking to this artist made me realize how pretentious my attitude was, coming from Europe, knowing nothing about the place where I was doing this project, and pretending to do a project very similar to the one Lorena was doing for 3 years, and I was planning to do it in 3 months. So I left my brief aside, and I decided for the first time to give myself the freedom to be an artist. And to me, to be an artist is to be connected with the reality around you. And the reality around me was a reality I knew nothing about. So I decided to walk. And I decided to be with the people there, and people would ask me, or they would tell me, please, professor, don't cross into that street because it's very dangerous. And I would ask, why is it dangerous? I don't know, they would say. I never been. So, being an alien in a city I knew nothing about, I would walk and I would go to that place that is dangerous. And I found that it was dangerous, but also was a place where many people were living in a very appalling conditions, which completely invisible to the society, to the city they were living. So for me it was a moment of realization that maybe this is what I have to do. Maybe I shall need to walk and see where the project, the idea that is there somewhere waiting for me to unfold. And after 1 week, I came across this place called Corabastos. Corabastos is the largest food market supplies in the whole of the Latin American continent. And when I arrived there, I realized that that was where my work, my project is going to start. And I want to share with you, this project now that we had a group projection. I would like to show you what I call the flickering darkness. Flickering darkness is my personal attempt to share a narrative, a fragmented narrative that it seems quite chaotic, but isn't violent chaotic, isn't violent turn our soul normality, our life completely upside down. So to me, it makes sense that the work is chaotic. And I just need you to look at the work and try to make sense of that chaos. Let's have a look at this now. Flickering Darkness is my personal attempt to work with a community that's invisible. They work at night in this market that you've seen. Over 80,000 people work there every night. And there's a big majority of people who has suffer a displacement, in fact, because of the violence. I'm just trying to highlight these projects because, for me, working with Flickering Darkness made me realize how my art project, could work as a bridge to bring ideas that somehow remain invisible, and how I can produce art that makes an audience talk and think about a reality that is difficult to digest. As a result of this preoccupation, I started in 2003 a project called Talking Syria. And Talking Syria is again a very personal response to what's happening in the world. Somebody said to me, "Oh, Juan, you are not an artist, a studio artist. You're not the artist that go from 9 to 5 to produce art." And certainly I am not. I had to go out there. I had to go out to the world and find out the stories I want to know. So Kishetna in Arabic means our stories. And Kishetna, I think my friend Dima can explain better than me.
Everyone describes Damascus as the city of jasmine, but I never understood why. Now, after my displacement, I pass by a certain spot on the way to where I now live, and a flashback strikes me. The street facing Jahez Park, the long flight of steps.
Storytelling has been in Syria and the neighboring countries for centuries and centuries to go. And within the last century or so, the storytelling tradition became called the Hakawati tradition. And the Hakawati is a storyteller who sits every Thursday evening in a coffee shop and tells a story. The audience who will be smoking shisha and listening to music will be very much eager to hear the story. What we're trying to do with Qissitna today is to bring out the Hakawati inside every Syrian, if you like. And what we're trying to do is to provide a platform for people to tell their stories. A platform where they feel safe to share their thoughts. A platform where they feel they can reach out to people and have the voice, which in so many cases have been taken away from them.
The Syrian crisis is so immediate, and I've been trying very hard to understand who are these people, aside from the people I see on the news who are very distant to me. Being able to read stories written and told by Syrians, it makes them more real to me. Everyone describes Damascus as a city of jasmine, but I never understood why. Now, after my displacement, I pass by a certain spot
on my way to where I now live, and a flashback strikes me. The street facing Al-Jahez Park, the long flight of steps up the hill in Mashroudimah. That's what takes me back every time to my Damascus. I think storytelling is very important for everyone, but especially for us young people who lived their childhood in Syria and then were forced to leave the country and might not be able to go back anytime soon. To not forget where we come from, to not forget how our country was, and just not let our culture die.
During the war, everyone is talking about how all these amazing ancient heritage sites and ruins are being destroyed. But also a part of this heritage is our oral heritage, the heritage that if we don't make sure we preserve and document, will end up going away completely.
And I would say that Talking Syria also is work as a bridge in which we can access a reality that we cannot access through the media. This is an ongoing project. It's an ongoing online platform in which I try to connect people who has been for 5 years through tremendous tragedy, tremendous trauma, reconnect them with themselves, with the human side. But also, these people are talking in English so we can access them, we can understand who they are. And I think in this sense, my art practice, play a very important role that is complemented with the exhibition that you see up there in the gallery, Altered Landscapes, which is also a personal response as a European person to the reality that we all live in these days. So I will leave it here. We can maybe keep talking after on the Q and answer. Thank you very much.